Well, you've made that very easy for me, because all we have to do is bring listeners back and get them focused on Saul Alinsky in particular, and also Gramsci, who was an Italian Marxist. You don't need to read huge books. You can go on the internet and just Google both of them. And what you will find these men talking about is getting in to destroy traditional democracies, to destroy traditional communities by getting in and destroying families, and particularly Christian families. And their tactics are, instead of guns and bombs and bullets, you actually infiltrate into the establishment, the system itself, and then you do the damage from the inside. But the family unit, the heterosexual family unit, was always their primary target, because if you can break up mothers and fathers, mums and dads, and you can take the children, then those children can be groomed straight into the new political ideology. And what we've got to do is put the scale of this. Remember that Britain is a much smaller country than America, but we're dealing with, at the moment, with over 60,000 children who are actually have been taken away from their parents. The children are being taken inside courts where there are no juries, where the press is not allowed to be. So these are secret courts. Their star chamber is the correct word in Britain for them. They are secret courts. The evidence brought in is falsified. Psychiatrist reports, psychologist reports contain lies, false information. They are factually incorrect. And it doesn't matter what the parents do inside the court, their children are taken from them. And again, we know that the government in UK is beginning to get very fearful of the speed at which the information is coming out, because in the last 2 days, a gentleman called David Norgrove has published his report on family justice, and he's actually saying that the whole process should be speeded up. In particular, he's saying that if a couple breaks up, the father should not have automatic access to his own children. And he's also saying, this man, that grandparents who actually get involved when couples break up and say, we can look after the children, that those grandparents are actually doing damage to the children, and they should be cut out. Now, David Cameron, let's stay focused on David Cameron, because this man is so dangerous. David Cameron, the Prime Minister of Britain, is backing a report which says that fathers should be denied access to their children. This is the work of Gramsci, and of course David Cameron is not a conservative in any shape or form. He is a subversive. I personally regard him as a domestic extremist, and what he is doing is implanting Gramscian ideology. So this is why we're having such an amazing attack on families, and thousands of children are being taken away, because if we can break down the family, then the state can claim the children. It's as simple as that.
And I mean, this goes to the very heart of broken Britain, which is this phrase we hear constantly. Most people don't realise that it's been deliberately broken. If it's broken, then somebody's going to put it back together again, and you can bet that that's going to be the state. And a shining example of what it leads to is what we witnessed in the UK back in August, which was the riots. Now, I'm guessing, Brian, that came as a completely expected to you. I mean, your newspaper's been predicting widespread social unrest. I predicted it in articles I wrote 2 years ago. So I'm guessing that the riots, which started in London and spread across major cities back in August, didn't come as a surprise to you.
Oh, well, absolutely not. And it was very easy to see within within a few hours, but certainly within 24 hours, that these were not spontaneous riots from people who'd had enough. It just didn't stack up. We know how difficult it is to organise people across the country, and here we had the British government saying that riots were being organised in not only London but other cities across UK, that these riots were being organised by young black teenagers using BlackBerry phones. This is absolute nonsense. What was actually happening was the violence was being created by government agitators. And we also know from residents in some of the areas where the riots took place that they watched police deliberately held back so that they didn't intervene, and the thing then grew. The trouble on the streets grew. So somebody was ordering the police, let's stand back, let's allow this thing to grow, let's kick it off. And we've got better information than that, because some British policemen, and these are brilliant people because they're so brave, they have actually been leaking information that when they were taken into an area where the rioting had started, they saw other so-called police units who they didn't recognise. They had no idea what units these really were. They had no idea where the people had come from. And in many cases, they were talking about so-called policemen who didn't have any formal number or name identity on them. So we have British policemen who are themselves now starting to blow the whistle on the fact that when there is trouble on the streets, there are agitators who are being moved into position, via our own policing system. So this is very, very dangerous, because we have now got government-backed agitation. And if listeners are thinking, where do they want to take this? I'll give my opinion. So this is just Brian Gerrish's opinion on this one. They want absolute major violence on the streets of Britain, because if they can create that major violence, they will bring in the Civil Contingencies Act, which is roughly equivalent to the American Patriot Act. The moment the Civil Contingencies Act is in place, we are living in a dictatorship. So whenever we're giving talks as the UK column or the British Constitution Group, we're constantly warning that we need people to be peaceful. We don't need fights between blacks and whites or Muslims or Christians, whatever the groups are. If we fight amongst ourselves, the criminals who are in power in the Senate in America and Congress and in Westminster in Britain, those criminals win. We've got to be smarter than violence at the moment. We've got to keep it calm and peaceful, and we've got to get the truth out about how our countries are being destroyed from the inside.
And I mean, just to back you up, we actually did a story in regard to the riots where Twitter users were reporting that men claiming to represent the media were actually driving around the streets and paying them to riot, paying them to break shop windows, as he said, paying them to become agitators. So, I mean, those riots, obviously, after it went on the social meme and it was on the news every night, you had copycats going out and doing the same thing. But the genesis of those riots, as you said, was definitely provocateur in many ways. Extrapolating this out, just about the general state of Britain, Brian, perhaps the best way to frame that is to ask, what do groups like Common Purpose want to turn Britain into, and how far have they got down that path?
Well, very simply, Common Purpose wants to create a new society. It doesn't ever define the society properly, because this is how the con works. If you said to people, join Common Purpose, and we are working to overturn present society, and we want to create a new society that's going to be governed by a political elite, most people would run away. So what Common Purpose is doing is being very, very devious. It's sucking people into courses where it's giving them an education to impose this new ideology on them. And we know how it is being done, and I really would ask listeners to go away and research this for themselves. The way they are doing it is to use NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. This is a form, technically it's a form of hypnosis, but these are very, very, very sophisticated techniques of messing around with people's minds. And although NLP can be used to help people, it can be used in therapeutic ways. What we are seeing is NLP being used to promote a very dangerous political agenda, and it's being used to change people's views and values without them actually being aware of it. Now, if you say to me, how bad has it got, I'm going to be able to say with total confidence, because the UK column has published this stuff in detail, we've now got Common Purpose embedded at the highest level of government. One of Cameron's ministers who's helping promote it is Oliver Letwin, who I'll say just happens to be an ex-MN Rothschild man. But we've got Common Purpose, which is a political charity. I know that I've already said earlier that it's not possible to be political, but I'm sure they are. They are now bedded straight into the government cabinet office, and they have been put under contract to help set up behavioural change units in every government department. Now, this is not fantasy, this is fact. We've got the documents, we know the names, we know when the meetings took place. So in the UK at the moment, every key government department has a cell which is tasked, first of all, with changing the views and values and behaviour of the government department people. And when they've achieved that, the departments are going to use the same effects on us to change our views and values in society. Now, the government's own documents, and I'll quote one of them, which is called Mindspace. Mindspace, you can find it on Google. In that document, it actually admits that the psychological processes they're using, the NLP they're using, can change our views and values and beliefs. We may not even know that those things have been changed. These modern applied psychology tools are so powerful, we can have our views changed. We're not even aware the views changed. Alternatively, we might realise we're changed, we're doing different things, but we don't know how it was done to us. Now, that's not Brian Gerrish telling the audience that. That has come straight out of government documents. So let's start to put this together. We've got in Britain, and the same thing's happening in America, we have international criminals who have now wormed their way. We've been stupid enough to elect them, but they're now in positions of power in government. They're linked to arms dealers. They're calling for wars throughout the world. And these people are prepared to use applied psychology on their own citizens in order to get their agenda through. This is very, very dangerous stuff, and we've got to take the lid off it.
And I mean, NLP, which you were talking about before, goes right to the heart of what you just said. It's about manipulating behaviour. It's about certain phrases and emphasis on words. And this is used in advertising, it's used in speeches, it's used in politics. And it's about trying to get people to do what you want them to do, get them to think what you want them to think by the words that you use. I mean, it's sold as a self-help tool, and I'm sure a lot of people do use it for that, but it's been hijacked and it's now being used for nefarious ends.